Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel and for a Christmas cake bake along for Stir Up Sunday. Now I'm collaborating with the lovely Christmas prepper and a link to her video will be in the description of the video below, so expand that and click on her video because we thought it'd be fun to collaborate together to show you how we make our Christmas cakes. Now her Christmas cake is quite different from mine. Very similar in the way that the cake is prepared and the sorts of ingredients that go into the cake, but at the end of the day it is a different cake. So yeah, be sure to pop along to her channel to go and check that out. So the cake recipe that I use is from the Delia Smith classic book from I think it was for the early 90s. I can't remember now because I don't have the book in front of me, but this book is like the Christmas cookbook Bible for me for things like mincemeat, mince pies, Christmas cake. Not Christmas pudding, because I have a recipe that was handed down from my nan, my grandma, to my mum, and then handed down to me. So I don't use that for Christmas puddings. I use the family hand-me-down recipe. But for everything else, I use Delia. And I guess one of the reasons that I use Delia is because I remember very much when that TV series came out on telly. I can't remember what channel it was on, but I remember sitting down with my mum and watching it. I believe it was on a Sunday. They always used to put nice series on like that on a Sunday around sort of tea time. We also used to watch Fanny Craddock, for those of you also old enough to remember Fanny Craddock. We used to watch Fanny Craddock and we used to watch Delia, and I still try and hunt down those episodes of Delia even now because it's just classic Christmas for me. It just reminds me of all things Christmas, I guess, like a childhood reminiscent time of Christmas. So yes, Delia is where it's at for me. And for those of you who also like Delia's classic Christmas, I recently found out that the whole series is now on Amazon Prime. So that is also very exciting for me. So, yes, Stir Up Sunday is traditionally falls on the Sunday before Advent starts. And the day, it doesn't actually get its name from stirring. It actually gets its name from the Book of Common Prayer. And it's the collect of the day for the last Sunday before Advent starts. And the quote is, "Stir up, we beseech thee, O Lord, the wills of thy faithful people." But since the Victorian times, Stir Up Sunday has more commonly been known as a time for the family to gather together and to stir up the Christmas pudding. For traditionally, it was people used to make their Christmas puddings and on Stir Up Sunday, and they would gather together because everybody would stir the pudding and make a wish. That was the tradition. And although I'm not making a Christmas pudding, and I'm not actually making a Christmas pudding this year, in our house, we're not having anyone over for Christmas dinner this year. And in our house, it's only my husband who likes Christmas pudding. Nobody else does. So I've just bought him like one of the tiny ones from a supermarket rather than making big ones. So, excuse me. Yeah, so not this year, but because the way a Christmas cake is made is very similar in some ways to a Christmas pudding, Stir Up Sunday has kind of morphed into making anything that entails soaking fruit in alcohol. So as you saw right at the very beginning of the video, I literally just put my fruit into a bowl. Do you know, I had two beautiful bowls. One was a glass bowl and one was a ceramic mixing bowl that I always used to use for my Christmas cakes and things. They broke. Literally like a couple of weeks ago, my youngest daughter was helping me to, I say help, with quote marks, to unload the dishwasher, and there was an accident and they broke. But anyway, so it was a bit of a crappy plastic bowl. But that bowl I used does have some sort of family ties, which is why I kind of used it, because it was my nan's and it used to be part of her food processor. So she was kind of involved in the making of the Christmas cake, even though she is no longer with us. So I tweak my Christmas cake recipe because I don't like currants and I'm not terribly keen on sultanas either. So I substitute the currants and the sultanas for dried cranberries because I really, really like dried cranberries. I love glacier cherries, and not all of the glacier cherries made it into the bowl, I'm going to admit that. And I don't mind the odd tipple of brandy now and then, but I'm not a big fan of brandy, and so I use port instead. I do like a glass of port, and cranberry and port go really, really lovely together. So it's just a case, as you saw, of just chucking all of the fruit into a bowl, and then I do actually give it a lot more alcohol than the recipe suggests to use because I like to. So yeah, give that a good stir up. Now, in days gone by, I've actually left my fruit to soak for up to a week sometimes. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not, because I've kind of forgotten about it. The recipe does actually say that just overnight, so that's what I did. I just soaked a little bit more than overnight actually, because I did it in the afternoon and then I baked my cake the following evening, and I did add a little bit more port to it in the morning and gave it a good stir, and the fruit just absorbs all of that alcohol and makes it expand and become juicy and succulent, and yes, just lovely. Now, when it comes to the cake, the actual cake mixture, I couldn't actually get any chopped almonds this year, and I didn't fancy chopping up my own almonds, so I just bought a bag of mixed nuts. And also, I didn't buy any black treacle. The recipe does suggest 1 dessert spoon of black treacle, but do you know, I always get in a mess with treacle. So this year I thought, sod it, because every year I buy treacle and I use the 1 dessert spoon for the cake, and then it goes in the cupboard, oozes everywhere, creates a great big mess, and then I end up throwing it out the next year. You know, because I just don't use black treacle in my cooking. And I haven't actually tasted the cake yet, but the making of the cake went down absolutely fine. So yes, just minging it. And I also thought I'd got mixed spice in my cupboard. I forgot to check and I didn't. And so that didn't go in, but never mind. And I didn't use butter. We have dairy-free people in our house. And I thought Christmas is probably not the time of year to poison my mother-in-law with giving her cake with butter in. So, so I used some dairy-free spread. Turns out fine. I've cooked Christmas cake without butter before. The Vitalite I have found in baking is one of the best if you want a sort of buttery flavour. Some of the other like soya spreads and everything aren't quite so. But the Vitalite is good if you wanted the buttery flavour. Now, when it comes to the Christmas cake, I have a food processor which I use all the time for making sponge cakes. But when it comes to my Christmas cake, I do really like to mix it by hand. I don't know. I just feel like there's a bit more of a connection, a bit more mindfulness for me when I'm making the cake. So yeah, I mix by hand. And the good thing about using spread or marge or whatever is it's already really soft, so you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, I just really like stirring. Stir up Sunday. Stir. I like to do it by hand, and because you're adding all those beautiful spices, you just get a really nice aroma in the kitchen and while you're making the cake. So it just feels good to me. But the Christmas cake, when did the Christmas cake become popular? Well, the Christmas cake started life as a plum porridge. interesting, which was designed to line people's stomachs after a day of religious fasting. Now, this is according to the Great British Bake Off, of course. So they say that soon other fruits and a dash of honey joined the plums and became the good old Christmas pudding. But then around the 16th century, people began to use richer ingredients, so the oats were removed. No, we don't need those pesky oats anymore. They were removed and flour and eggs were added. And so then the pudding started to resemble the kind of fruitcake that we recognise today. And then spices started to be brought over from the East that were then incorporated into the cake. And these were used to symbolise the 3 wise men, which I didn't actually realise. That, which is really interesting. I think we are a bit of a mixed sort of faith, not mixed faith. I would say that we identify as Christians, but we're not as a family, but we are not massively strict followers, if you know what I mean. Like, we don't go to church very often, but we do follow Christian practices in terms of observing Christmas and observing Easter, things like that. And so for me, I'm still learning things. Like, I was never taught in school or anything. I went to a C of E school, but we were never taught some of these things. So as an adult, I'm starting to learn some of these things, which is really interesting. So I never realised, and I still don't realise, some of why we celebrate in the way we celebrate, why we do some of the things we do. So I didn't realise that. So that's quite an interesting thing. So the spices were used to symbolise the 3 wise men. Anywho, so richer families, they could afford to wrap their cakes in marzipan, which makes them look more like the Christmas cake we eat today. So traditionally, Christmas cakes are made on stir up Sunday. Gather the family round together. Everyone stirs the fruit, makes a wish, and then your cake is baked. And what you'll see me do right at the very end is I will feed my cake. So I will use a skewer and poke holes in my cake. Some of you, if you're from the UK, you probably know this already, but I do know that I have a lot of international viewers, particularly those in the States. And so this kind of technique, this kind of recipe isn't something traditional for you guys. So if I'm teaching your granny to suck eggs, it might be that someone else doesn't really understand what I'm going on about. So so we feed the cake. So we poke holes all over the cake with a skewer or a cocktail stick. And then in the weeks up to Christmas, we just pour more alcohol, the same alcohol that we soaked the fruit in, over the cake. And the alcohol just absorbs into the cake and preserves it. So it's all about preserving. We watch, and I totally recommend, if you've never seen it, I know it's on YouTube, quite a lot of episodes on YouTube, the Victorian Farm and the Edwardian Farm, both really good TV series, totally recommend them. And even if you've watched them before, go back and rewatch, because it's really interesting, because it shows us kind of how where these sort of traditions come from. So we didn't have freezers back then, we didn't have the modern techniques of preserving our food that we do now. So it was really interesting that in olden times of days gone by, the only way of preserving some of your fruit so that you could have some vitamins later on in the year was to do things like soak them in alcohol, which now does not seem like a very healthy option. But for then it was, how are we going to store this fruit? How are we going to preserve this fruit? And I know that with the feeding of the Christmas cake, so you feed the Christmas cake throughout until you're going to eat it, really, with periodically through alcohol. And I can't remember entirely, but I'm pretty sure somewhere in the depths of my memory, I feel like my gran once said that she used to make 2 cakes, stir up Sunday, one for Christmas, and I think she used to save one for Easter. Because, I mean, probably should have done my research on this, but I'm pretty sure when you're feeding them with alcohol that they will last a long time. So yes, but obviously not iced. You need to keep your cake fed and wrapped up and in an airtight container. And then you ice it just before you're going to eat it. Now, as I said, the richer families, they started to wrap their cakes in marzipan, and then later on the fondant icing came on top. And that was because they had money, and it was a symbol of money and of wealth, that if you bought this beautiful Christmas cake out onto the table and it was covered in marzipan and icing, it was because you could show that you could afford it. You could afford the sugar, because sugar was very expensive. Now, I absolutely, with a passion, hate marzipan. So I never ice my cake with marzipan. In fact, I never ice it at all. When I was younger, I do remember my mum used to make a Christmas cake, which I used to help with. And it was my mum and I who made the cake. And it was my dad and I who used to ice the cake. And I remember one year we did an elaborate cake with covered in icing. And we used fondant icing and made loads of little snowmen to go on the top. I do remember that really vividly. It's these repetitive things. I posted on my From the Workshop Instagram a little quote about, you don't, as an adult or as a later teen or what have you, you don't remember the individual presents that you received as a child. I don't remember what present I received in 1986. I don't remember what present I received in 1994. But I do remember, as I said, I do remember watching Delia Smith's Christmas with my mum by the light of the Christmas tree. I remember that we used to have Christmas carols under the Christmas tree. I remember going to midnight mass with my mum and my nan. I remember helping my mum to make the cake and icing it with my dad. I remember making Christmas crackers out of loo rolls, which I still do with my children today. It's those things that we do over and over again, those repetitive things, those traditions that we do over and over again. That's what we remember. That's what we remember about Christmas, those warm fuzzies, the hygge, the way we feel. That is what we remember over Christmas. I remember always eating chocolate out of our Christmas stockings instead of breakfast in the morning. I remember the turkey never being cooked at the time that it was predicted it would cook. Always remember watching Christmas, the Queen on Christmas Day. Always remember my dad having a little bit magical too much for me. Just magical. There's all those to kind of do that, and I still do these things with my children now. Although this year they did not help with the cake. They were kind of around when I was soaking the fruit, and they were interested. It was met with kind of wrinkled noses over the smell of the port, and wasn't that exciting. Now, my children don't actually like Christmas cake either. The Christmas cake is usually eaten by myself and my husband. And as I said, I don't like marzipan, so I don't ice the cake. What we tend to do is leave it plain. I don't even dust it with icing sugar. I leave it plain, and we have a little wedge with some cheese. That is how we eat. We almost use the slice of Christmas cake a bit like a cracker, a bit like a biscuit for cheese, So either a really mature cheddar or some blue cheese, some Stilton or something. And then, so we'll have like a little plate, and we'll have a slice of cake and some cheese, and then maybe some walnuts or some other cracking nuts. Because Christmas isn't Christmas without a bowl of nuts and a nutcracker, is it? And yeah, that is how we'll eat our cake. And obviously, we always offer cake or mince pie to any visitors. Now, I didn't know this until a couple of years ago, that if you were offered a mince pie, it apparently is bad luck to refuse. There we go. So if you go to someone's house and they offer you a mince pie, even if you don't like them or don't fancy them, say thank you very much. And even if you put it in your pocket and take it home for someone else, it apparently is bad luck to refuse a mince pie. There we go. And I can't remember the source of that, so it could be a complete hokum, but that is just what I remember. Yep, so that is how we eat our Christmas cake in this house. Just a nice little platter. So we tend to have it as savoury, and then if people come round, we'll kind of offer them a slice of cake and a cup of tea, or maybe a little tipple to go with it. I need to buy more port because we are not massive drinkers in this house, so that bottle of port is actually the bottle of port that I bought for my husband last Christmas, and so I'll buy him another bottle this Christmas. And that will probably be have a little tipple over Christmas, and then it will probably be used again in next year's Christmas cake. But yeah, I need to order some more because I want to make mincemeat for our mince pies. And for those of you in the US, mincemeat, it's sweet mincemeat. So again, it's made with the fruits, the soaking of the fruits, and then cooked with suet. I use vegetable suet, and I'll probably do a video on that. As I said, like, I usually get my children to help with making the Christmas cake, but because I was videoing it, I didn't. I just got on with it, if I'm honest. But they weren't that bothered because I don't really like the smell of it and everything. And when it's cooking, oh my goodness, I think it fills the house with such delicious smells because you can smell the orange peel and you can smell the spices. And to me, it just smells like Christmas. But my eldest was like, "Oh, what's that smell?" So what we do, so the children have, and I, to be honest, on Christmas Day for our pudding, our dessert after our main meal, John, my husband, will have his mini shop bought Christmas pudding. And then what we do is on Christmas Eve, the girls and I, we make a Yule log, so a chocolate sponge made in the same way as a Swiss roll. And roll it up into the shape of a log and ice it with chocolate buttercream icing and make it look like a log. Now, the children, I help, but the children are responsible for this. And last year, we actually made a Christmas cactus. It was supposed to be a Yule log, but it looked more like a Christmas cactus. And if you follow me on my personal Instagram account, which is The Whimsical Cloud, then I did share pictures of our Christmas cactus. But we make that on Christmas Eve. On Christmas Eve, we always make mince pies so that we've got fresh mince pies for Christmas and for leaving out for Father Christmas. You know, we don't give Father Christmas shop bought mince pies. We give him handmade ones. So in the run up from when mince pies start coming into the shops in about October, I do buy them and eat them. I buy and eat shop bought mince pies. But for Christmas, for the main event, we make our own. And I also make my own pastry as well. So yeah, we make them. We feel in this house that Father Christmas should have a fresh handmade mince pie. And also by making our mince pies and our Yule log on Christmas Eve, it kind of keeps the children entertained because it's a very exciting day. They literally just cannot wait for Christmas. And by giving them things like mince pies to make, Yule logs to make, that kind of thing, it just helps to kind of keep them entertained so that the day can pass quickly. And we dress the table ready for the next day and we hang our stockings and have a buffet, little buffet party, that kind of thing. And it just kind of helps the day for them to go a little bit quicker by having something to do. So I hope you've enjoyed having a look at how I make my Christmas cake and just some kind of more information about traditions and everything. I love different traditions. As I said, like Christmas Prepper, she's made a totally different Christmas cake to me. She's used pistachios as her nuts, which sound very exciting. I love pistachio nuts. That sounds really exciting. So do you make a Christmas cake? If so, perhaps you could let us know in the comments below what Christmas cake you make and perhaps share your recipe. It's just really interesting to kind of know about different people's traditions and things like that. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Please check out the Christmas Prepper video. Follow us on Instagram as well, Christmas Prepper and me, from the workshop, or Mrs. Brimbles. And yeah, have a Merry Christmas, guys, and I hope you enjoy your cake making if you choose to be making a cake this year. Oh, and P.S. the cake cooks for about 4 hours on a low heat, 145 degrees Celsius, which is why you need to put lots of baking paper round it just to protect it. So despite me doing that, as you saw, I had to get John to kind of help me because it was a bit fiddly. Despite me doing that, it still did burn a little bit around the top edge, which is a bit annoying, but it will be fine. If nothing else, if it is a bit too burnt when it comes to eating, we can just cut the edges off. I'm sure the inside will be absolutely lovely, because if you look on the middle of the top of the cake, it's not burnt at all, so I'm sure it will still be delicious. But I just thought I'd point that out. Someone says it's burnt. Yes, it is. Every year it happens as well. I still haven't been able to perfect that. So still tastes good.